Okay, I'm going to start this by talking about the hat I'm wearing right here, Granite Mountain Hot Shot hat that's on my head. Of course, Granite Mountain Hot Shots were a crew that was killed by a fire that overran them some years ago. And there was a very famous movie made about them. Very good movie, as a matter of fact, even from a firefighter perspective, called Only the Brave. This hat was given to me by McCandless out of California there. He's worked with many hot shots over the years on various fires, had them as our div soups and bosses, and worked beside them, including crews from Idaho. In fact, we worked on the Idaho border in my first season, and at some point, I guess we'd crossed the border. I mean, everything was burnt up down by Christina Lake. And that's, who do you think was there on the other side, right? Yeah, a very upsetting news, this thing that's happened. And I think it deserves to be talked about. And I know people already like, Joey, you shouldn't be making this political. It's not me that's going to make it political. It's the people who do these kinds of acts that make it political. Okay, I'm going to report to you on the truth of the matter, what's been going on in this town, Coeur d'Alene. Down there in Idaho, it's a hotbed of radical right-wing extremism. You're talking neo-Nazis, KKK, Proud Boy types. They've had open parades in the streets. You know, this is nuts. You know, Mark Ingalls was telling me about the senator there who got kicked out of the legislature for being attached to this Bible camp where they were teaching young men to carry out biblical warfare, killing any gay person or anyone who supports gay people, gay marriage. Okay, this is what goes on in Coeur d'Alene. You think I'm making it political? These people are. These people are violent, insane insurrectionists, and they believe that civil war has to happen in America. You know, and, you know, I'm sure when we find out who the perps are, you're going to find that they are either connected to, friends with, radicalized by these crazy ideas. So I said in my post, these people who think that people like me are just trying to burn the world down with our radical left ideology. I mean, man, I'm just giving forecasts away for free in between fire season. Yeah, so these folks, they don't believe in climate change. They think that firefighters are starting the fires. They think that the forest just needs to be raked because that's what Trump said. What we do know first came from things that were heard on the scanner. This is very disturbing, and I'll warn you, firefighters, especially because we've heard this language so much. I'm going to stay, you know, we're at staging.
Central BC 5, Central BC 5. BC 5 upstate. Send law enforcement right now. There's an active shooter zone. They're shot. BC 3's down. BC 1's down. Everybody's shot up here. Law enforcement, code 3 now up here. 551, 10 or 14 up here. Stop. Get out of the way. 10 or 14. Engine push 551. Do not come up here. 51 copies. Remaining staging.
551 copies remaining at staging. Wow. So fire crews were forced to retreat there. The Kootenai Sheriff's Office has issued a shelter-in-place advisory warning locals to avoid the area. There may be people trapped by this fire. These people started a fire with the intention to shoot and kill wildland firefighters. It's a targeted attack. They know exactly what they're doing. This isn't some random people who just lost their mind and just started shooting. No one does this. You can set up and shoot people at will anywhere if you want to be a sniper. That's happened before. So police units are there, medical teams, there's FBI on site, there's helicopters. It's all happening there right now. It's all happening. In fact, I can show you where it's happening if you'd like. So this is FIRMS. Of course, this is satellite hotspot detection. We can tell where the fire was. So here's the Kootenai, and there's Northeast Hillside, French Gulch there. We got this series of roads leading up. I can't zoom in any closer, unfortunately. I mean, we could on other applications, however, not this particular firm's, not with the access I have at least. So somewhere in this canyon, somewhere in this 400 meter square here is where the fire was lit and where this horrific and insane fucked up thing happened. 3 firefighters appear to be the only victims, so seems like the one has survived, so it's 2. Man found dead with gun nearby. So I don't think anyone knows what's going on. I'm just going to tell you that. Until it's light out, no one really knows what's going on, man. But at least the one guy's fighting for his life and he's stable. And we have 300 law enforcement officers, It's unclear whether the man had shot himself, what the motive might have been. They're not concerned about a possible second shooter, so that's good. They believe this is the only shooter in the mountain. The man has not been identified as a shooter, who they found dead. There's an active wildfire as well in the area. That's this whole other thing that is going on. So, again, there's a whole lot we don't know yet, but there's some things we do know. Coeur d'Alene itself is a hotbed of extremism. It's a hotbed of it. This is going on there. North Idaho has drifted to the right. Idaho leaders call out extremist culture. I mean, look at some of this stuff. This is scary stuff. We cannot be passive to eliminate hatred and bigotry. This file, Gerald O'Brien gives a salute during the World Congress Parade held in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 40 Aryan Nation people marched in there. This has been going on a long time. These groups have been organizing in this area a long time. They've been rooted there. So, this is part of the culture of Coeur d'Alene, right? If you lived in a place where this kind of thing wasn't going on and weren't exposed to it, even if this shooter isn't actively involved in these groups, this is what this mentality, this is what this hatred does, with this conspiracy theory driven people. They don't want to believe in science. They think everyone on the left is just out to trick them with some conspiracy about climate change. They think that firefighters are starting the fires or that there's space lasers doing it. They have a fundamental lack of knowledge and lack of understanding is what motivates a lot of these right-wing extremist groups. And I'm not talking about your average run-of-the-mill people who are like, well, I'm right-wing, well, I'm left-wing. Okay, well, that's nice. Let's have a coffee and talk about it. Who did you vote for? And this is something different, people. This is something different. This isn't your average. This is fucked up shit. I strongly condemn the appalling treatment of the female college athletes who were visiting Coeur d'Alene prior to the beginning of the basketball tournament in Spokane. To the Utah and Irvine universities, we express regret and sorrow that your student athletes are treated with such disdainful treatment while visiting our city. Like, wow. Coeur d'Alene Mayor Jim Hammond. Like, it's out in the open. It's out in the open. Then there was this Republican lawmaker who aided the group training young men for biblical warfare. The group Team Rugged. They offered patriotic and biblical training that includes instruction on how to use knives and guns. And who were they going to use it against? Gay people and stuff. The Republican Matt Shea was with a group offering training to young men in biblical warfare that includes how to use rifles and stuff, based on the teachings of a Georgia-based neo-Confederate pastor. Shea, who was an elected representative, later made videos in support of the group and appeared alongside them at a gathering of religious community in remote eastern Washington. He paid for the funder of the group money from his campaign fund in 2018. So what were these people doing? It's a Christian organization that strongly believes in building manly character and the capability to stand in adversity of young men. Everything about it, both politically incorrect and will be considered shocking to most modern Christians. There will be scenarios where every participant will have to fight against one of the most barbaric enemies that are invading our country, Muslims, or they will be biblical teaching on biblical warfare, the responsibilities, regulations, principles, and so that our young men will be better prepared to fight against physical enemies and to do God's way with his blessing. Holy. proponent. He's a leading proponent, this Georgia-based weaver, of training Christians for armed battle. And this is what, look at these people, right? Just to give you an idea, some of the connections going on in Washington and Idaho, eastern Washington and Idaho. And there's a hotbed of extremism there. Now, let's look at the contradictions behind this statement from Brad Little made on X there. Multiple heroic firefighters attacked today, responding to a fire in Idaho. It's heinous direct assault on our brave firefighters, too. That's true. I ask all Idahoans to pray for the families. Just pray, that's all. We're heartbroken, and let's pray. And let's not, think about the culture that gives rise to gun nuts who go around shooting people. Let's not talk about that at all, Brad. And go back to 2022, this one article I'm reading here on National Public Radio. Idaho's Republican primary was seen as a national test for how far to the right the GOP can be pulled, as several candidates tied to extremist groups were running for governor and the legislature. It says here, wow. Governor Brad Little is facing a primary challenge today. Janice McGeachin is the state's lieutenant governor. She's one of the several Republicans in Idaho primaries with ties to extremist militia groups. She spoke at a white nationalist conference recently, and she has the endorsement of Donald Trump. NPR's Kurt Siegler was based in Boise. He was talking to this guy, Siegler, who works for NPR, and he's saying Republicans hold a supermajority there at the Capitol, especially in the pandemic. There was a rise in extremism within the GOP. There's a long history of extremism. You can think back to Ruby Ridge standoff 30 years ago, very famous. The Aryan nations were headquartered in the Idaho Panhandle, but lately we're seeing extremism enter the mainstream of Republican politics across the country. A faction there is calling for armed rebellion. Siegler goes on to state, in other states, Governor Brad Little would be a hardline, hard-right Republican. He just signed a Texas-style abortion ban. But as you say, Donald Trump endorsed Janice McGeachin. It's widely thought that Little will still secure the nomination. And he did. He won. He's today saying this stuff. And he's saying, what a terrible tragedy, as we should pray. Meanwhile, these people have profited off of the rise of extremist rhetoric in Idaho. It's one of the fastest growing states in the nation, actually. You wouldn't believe that. A lot of white flight coming from California up there, especially since the pandemic, right? So, I mean, you just Google Idaho and extremism and see how many tens of thousands of articles you come up with. This is what's normal in Idaho. Okay. I have to enter an email address. Fucking Washington Post. What a garbage. Idaho governor signs bill to ban critical race theory from being taught in school. The theory states that racism is embedded in U.S. history and modern American law, and that legal institutions are inherently racist. It's fucking true. You don't want the truth out there. I get it. I get it. So this is Brad Little, who's considered a moderate. This guy, considered a moderate, now being out there. Let's pray for everybody. How appalling. How appalling. Eat shit, Brad. Take some credit for not just profiting off of, but also helping push and normalize an extremism in going mainstream in Idaho. All you Canadians should be very concerned about this. These people are on our border. And now a lot of these extremists think that invading Canada is the next fucking thing they should be doing. Whether or not they start targeting Canadians down there, or whether or not we have lunatics like this end up in Canada targeting our firefighters in the future, or other emergency responders, or anybody, people of color, women, the queer community, right? Think about these people. Think about the poison that's spreading with their message. But we even seen in British Columbia a number of times, we've seen weird vigilante groups during the pandemic that were targeting hospitals and doing, direct actions on hospitals, on hospital staff and things like that. How does this mentality carry forward into something that's toxic and possibly dangerous. And then what's the limit? What's the extent of how far you can go once you go down that rabbit hole of thought? How far can that hatred bring you? Can that madness bring you? You know, and so it's easy to say, well, it's just a mental health case. Yeah, well, do you think that there's any neo-Nazis who don't have mental health fucking problems? I'm waiting for an answer on that one. Are these stable geniuses who just have wrong ideas about the world? Or is this a propagating a culture of violence and intimidation and the idea of civil warfare against people you don't like? This time it was firefighters. Other times it's been going into a gay club in Florida and shooting dozens of people, murdering people at random. How many of these kind of events do you need to see before you like look at it and go, wow, it's always the same kind of people who believe the same kind of things? You know, oh, what? Look at all the swastikas those kids who went and shot Columbine were drawing in their books. You know, understand the history of the ideology and when it keeps popping up and what its adherents tend to do. What do they do? Go back to Germany or Italy or any of these proto-fascist states that we recognize as being like kind of the cookie cutter model of this is what a fascist state does, or this is what fascist groups do. You know, how do they all begin? With random acts of violence and then becoming more and more organized violence and this belief in violence. It's real. So then we had in British Columbia at the Scotch Creek fire, firefighters not being able to go to work because these people were blocking the roads, and good for ministry. It's just like, we are not sending crews through that. I go to work in the bush when they finally call me, when it stops raining in the Caribou and there's work to do. Go work in the wilderness somewhere, not to deal with the public who might be hostile and violent and intimidating. So understand the mentality that this comes from, the kind of psychopath. What does a psychopath who's going to go start a fire in the bush and shoot the people who come to put it out, what do they believe? What do they think? What's their view in the world? Think about it, and you're going to come to a very simple friggin' answer. Okay. My condolences to everybody involved down there. My advice to all you firefighters is take this stuff seriously. This should be intimidating. This should worry you. It should worry you. It worries me. I'll tell you why. How many times have I received threats of various kinds? You know, either for speaking about fire weather or speaking about weather. How many times? You know how many times? It's a lot, man. It's a lot. I've been targeted a lot. Even in my own town here, there's a nutcase. This is just one guy here in the Wells area who lost some property out there and thinks that, I guess he thinks his place was burned down intentionally. He thinks that wildfire service went out there and started a fire or something to burn his place down. You know, and I don't want to hear his crap anymore. But, you know, this is an example. Like, I'd never talk to this guy. He just sends me violent messages. People who believe climate change is a hoax, and people like me are just, you know, trying to push some conspiracy. It's fucked up, and it's toxic, and it's deadly. Be safe out there this summer, fire crews. Be wary of the public. Sorry to say it.